There were two more murders 15 miles away.
When police arrived, they found the telephones and electricity lines.
We have a weird
A
homicide.
scene described by one investigator as reminiscent of a weird...
Morning.
Cup of murder.
Every victim deserves to have their crime solved and the one responsible brought to justice. On July 4th, 1987, a family suffered at the hands of a man who almost escaped punishment, due in large part to the community's personal feelings about the victims. So, if you like your coffee hot but your bones chilled, sit back and start your day with a morning cup of murder. According to the book called Blood Relative, Portrait of a Mass Murder by Crockett Stevenson, the Kunz family moved to Marathon County near Wausau, Wisconsin, in the year 1914 under the promise of land. Planning to cultivate a successful farm, when they arrived, they found that the ground was covered by tree stumps left over from a lumber company whose barons knew the land was bad and took advantage of the family's lack of knowledge. What they didn't take into consideration was the tenacity of the Kunz family and how much they were willing to do to keep themselves afloat, managing to stash away $20,000 in cash inside their home and pay all of their bills in cash. Living on the land in a battered home with no indoor plumbing nestled deep in the woods, the family generally kept to themselves, and because of this, were seen as outsiders by the community, who thought with their out-of-fashion hand-me-down clothing and their aloofness that they were strange. They only got stranger when, during the summer of 1987, their ramshackle home became the scene of a bizarre and ghastly crime. On the morning of July 5th, Kenny Kunz found the bodies of his family members inside of the home that they all shared. 72-year-old Marie Kunz was found at the entrance of the home. 30-year-old Randy was found lying in the kitchen. 76-year-old Clarence was found in the bedroom. And 81-year-old Irene was found in a living room chair. All had been shot in the head at close range by a .22 caliber rifle. According to the videotape taken as police walked through the crime scene, played for the jurors during what would be a month-long trial, the sounds of a baseball game between the Brewers and the Angels could be heard in the background. And though the tape itself would later be edited, it was clear that a fifth member of the family, 70-year-old Helen Kunz, was missing from the scene. Initially believing that maybe she was the one responsible for the murders, despite their previous views on the family, the community rallied together to try and find Helen, who, by that point, was determined to be a victim of kidnapping. 9 months later, police received a tip and were led straight to the marsh in neighboring Taylor County, where they found Helen's body. She, too, had been shot in the head. Now, here is where things get even weirder. In trying to understand a motive and in hopes of finding the person responsible for the murders, police began combing through the Kunz home to see if they could find any valuable clues. This is when they found out that, despite living in the late 80s, the Kunz family lived with no plumbing and no source of heat beyond a single wood-burning stove. But they did own a TV and VCR, where they could watch the extensive library of sexually explicit videotapes in their possession. Believing that they sat and watched the films as a family, and also finding a trove of explicit magazines, police wondered why a family would forego basic amenities but spend their money on such strange objects. Their theories seemed to be proven when they spoke with a store clerk, who, a few weeks before her disappearance, heard Helen mention how angry she was with her family for watching, quote, dirty movies. That's when they also learned about how the family liked to pay for things in cash, and how they seemed to keep all of it inside of their home. Not a ton was known about the Kunz family, at least not a lot that could be proven or that didn't come through shared whispers in the community. Some reports indicate that Helen slept in the same bed as her adult son, Randy, and it was said that Clarence, Marie, and Irene, Helen's siblings, all slept together in the living room. Because of this odd sleeping arrangement, many started to question survivor Kenny's true parentage, as rumors swirled about incest. Though she said she became pregnant at 15 with a neighbor, Frank Gums, who was later convicted of raping her, many claimed that Helen and Clarence, her brother, had an unusually close relationship, and that he was her son's true father. There were also claims that this murder, though peculiar, was not the first to happen in the Kunz family. In 1905, their grandmother, Mary Kunz, allegedly murdered her son and was later deemed criminally insane. Just a few weeks before the murder, Helen allegedly purchased .22 caliber bullets, claiming they were for her son to take care of some blackbirds swarming their property. Though this seemed to fuel the claims that she was the one who killed the rest of her family, all of that was of course dispelled when her body was found with clear indications of murder. Despite the strangeness, police were able to concentrate their energy on a suspect named Christopher Jacobs III, who, before the murder, purchased a vehicle from the Kunz family. One of the very few non-family members to ever interact with them, the 21-year-old farmer came to police attention about 6 months after the murder, before Helen's body was found, and in searching his home and car, police found 2 .22 caliber rifles, ammunition for the weapons, spent shell casings, and newspaper clippings about the case. They also found a receipt for new tires, and according to the police, both the original tires and the spent shell casings were a match for what was found at the Kunz family farm. Though the defense said the entire thing was based on circumstantial evidence, the prosecutors charged Christopher with all 5 murders, and his trial began in October of 1989. This is when the jury saw that grisly videotape, but after 10 hours of deliberation, they came back finding Christopher Jacobs not guilty of murder. Many, like Crocker Stevenson, were surprised Christopher was acquitted and believed there was enough evidence to point to him as the killer. He said, though, that the family's, quote, otherness played a role in the jury's decision, and ultimately found themselves siding with someone less strange than their victims. The Marathon County District Attorney must have agreed, because in 1993, they charged Christopher Jacobs again, but this time with the kidnapping and false imprisonment of Helen Kunz just hours before the statute of limitations on the case ran out. He again fought against the charges against him and appealed the decision with the U.S. Supreme Court. Refusing to hear the case, a second trial began on June 8, 1998. This time, the prosecution had a new witness taking the stand. A former girlfriend of Christopher's who said that, in June of 1993, he confessed to the murders of the Kunz family. She said that the pair were driving together to a bar to play with their pool league, when suddenly Christopher turned to her and asked how she would react if he told her that he had actually committed the murders. According to her claims, Christopher said that he was let into the home by Randy Kunz on the night of July 4th, 1987. The pair knew each other from when the car was sold, but not long after being allowed entrance into the elusive family home, Christopher and Randy got into an argument that ended when the .22 caliber rifle was used on the Kunzes. He then tied up Helen, the mother of the man he fought, drove her to the swamp, killed her, and left her body to be found by police 9 months later. He allegedly told the girlfriend that he killed the family to, quote, prove to himself he was a man. He claimed he also confessed to his lawyer, who, at the trial, tried to paint the girlfriend as a liar who gave false testimony to get out of burglary and bank robbery charges in Minnesota. After 2 weeks of argument and 4 hours of deliberation, the jury found Christopher Jacobs guilty of kidnapping, and he was sentenced to 31 years in prison with a mandatory release date of February 8th, 2020. However, after trying and failing to get that sentence reduced in 2018 and being officially released on parole on February 4th, 2020, Christopher Jacobs, 53 years old, returned to prison, stating he had, quote, no interest in being let out. Refusing to sign what was necessary for his parole, he said he wished to serve out the rest of his sentence. As far as I can tell, he remains behind bars. Thank you for joining me in my morning cup of murder. Please join me again tomorrow to hear a terrible thing happened on July 5th. Don't forget to rate and subscribe and let me know how you like it. If you want to help support the podcast, there's always Patreon or just sharing it with your true crime obsessed friends. And remember, stay safe.